There are certain sounds that trigger a Pavlovian response of pure dread. The screech of tires on pavement, a smoke alarm in the middle of the night, and, for me, a sharp, authoritative knock on the front door when I'm not expecting anyone. I was in the kitchen, trying to coax my 14-year-old son, Leo, into helping me with the dishes. He was slumped at the table, his lanky frame all elbows and knees, endlessly scrolling through his phone with the kind of teenage apathy that can suck the energy right out of a room. It was a normal Tuesday night in our new, slightly too quiet life. Then came the knock, sharp, impatient, official sounding. Leo didn't even look up. I dried my hands on a dish towel, my stomach giving a familiar, nervous flutter. My ex-husband, Mark, had been gone for 6 months, and in that time, I had learned to associate the unexpected with bad news. If you've ever been through a nasty divorce, the kind where the person you once built a life with turns into a cruel and calculating stranger, you know that feeling in the pit of your stomach, that constant, low-grade anxiety. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to fight for your own truth against someone who used to be your best friend. I opened the door to a man in a rumpled suit holding a large manila envelope. He looked bored. "Anna Morgan?" he asked, mispronouncing my last name. "Yes, you've been served," he said, thrusting the envelope into my hands. He didn't wait for a reply. He just turned and walked back to his car. I closed the door, my heart starting to pound. "You've been served." The words echoed in the sudden silence of the hallway. I knew it was coming. The divorce was one thing, but the custody arrangement for Leo was the final, looming battleground. Mark and I had a temporary agreement, but I knew he wouldn't let it stand. Mark never let anything go. He had to win. I walked back into the kitchen, the envelope feeling heavy and toxic in my hands. "Who was that?" Leo asked, not looking up from his phone. "No one, honey," I said, my voice strained. "Just business." I waited until he had retreated back into the black hole of his bedroom before I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd just been sitting, and I opened the envelope. The legal jargon was dense and intimidating. Petition for dissolution of marriage. In re the marriage of Mark and Anna Morgan. I skimmed through the boilerplate sections on division of assets. He could have the ugly leather sofa. He could have the stupid, overpriced watch I bought him for our 10th anniversary. I didn't care about any of that. All I cared about was Leo. I flipped to the section titled Custody of Minor Child. And that's when the floor fell out from under my world. I read the words, my eyes scanning the page, but my brain refused to comprehend them. It was a formal, legal petition for sole physical and legal custody of our son. My son. And then I saw the reason why. The justification. It was a numbered list of my alleged failings, a greatest hits collection of my faults, all twisted and magnified into monstrous new shapes. The respondent, Anna Morgan, is frequently emotionally volatile and prone to irrational outbursts. I thought of the one time I had cried in front of him after my mother's cancer diagnosis. He had called me dramatic. The respondent has demonstrated an inability to maintain a stable and predictable home environment, crucial for the child's development. He was talking about the time I was laid off from my job, and we had to live on a tight budget for 3 months, a budget I had meticulously managed to keep us afloat while he was out buying a new sports car with his new girlfriend. I saw her name then, listed as a character witness for him, Tiffany, the 20-something yoga instructor he'd left me for. I pictured her, all-toned limbs and serene, smug smiles, testifying about my instability, but the final line was the one that felt like a physical blow. It was the one designed to kill me. Due to this pattern of behavior, the petitioner claims the respondent is an unfit and bad mother. Therefore, the petitioner seeks sole custody to protect the child's welfare. A bad mother. The papers slipped from my numb fingers and scattered across the kitchen table. A bad mother. It was the one accusation, the one fear, that lives in the dark heart of every woman who has ever tried to raise a child. It was my deepest insecurity, the one I had whispered to him in the dark after a long night with a colicky baby Leo, and he had taken that sacred, vulnerable secret, and he had weaponized it. He had sharpened it into a legal dagger and was now plunging it into my chest. My vision blurred. I looked around my small, clean kitchen. I saw the finger paintings Leo had made in kindergarten, still stuck to the refrigerator with fruit-shaped magnets. I saw the scuff marks on the wall where he and his friends had gotten too rowdy playing video games. I saw the whole history of our life together, a life I had poured my entire soul into building for him, especially since Mark had left. And this man, this stranger who I had once loved, was going to stand up in a court of law and call me a bad mother. The shock began to recede, replaced by a rage so pure and so hot it burned the tears from my eyes. This wasn't just a divorce tactic. This was an act of profound cruelty. He didn't want to win custody because he thought I was a bad mother. He knew I wasn't. He wanted to win custody to prove I was a bad mother, to win, to punish me for not being the perfect, adoring wife he thought he deserved. He wasn't just trying to divorce me. He was trying to erase me, to erase my entire identity as a mother. The only identity that had ever truly mattered to me. I stood up, my hands clenched into fists. I walked over to the refrigerator and looked at a recent school photo of Leo. His smile was a little forced, his hair a little too long. But his eyes were kind and smart. He was a good kid, a great kid, and he was mine. Mark had started a war, and he had made a critical mistake. He had aimed his attack not just at me, but at my son. And there is no force on this earth more powerful than a mother defending her child. He wanted a fight. Fine. He was about to get one. I picked up my phone, my fingers steady now. I looked up the number for the best, sharpest, most aggressive family law attorney in the city. The battle had been declared, and I would not lose. I couldn't. The first meeting with my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Davis, was a splash of cold water. She read through Mark's petition, her expression grim. "He's playing dirty," she said, her words clipped. "This isn't about Leo's welfare. This is about winning. He's going to paint you as an unstable, hysterical woman and himself as the calm, rational, stable parent. Our job is to prove that stability is not the same thing as love." And so began the campaign. While Miss Davis and I were buried in paperwork, financial disclosures, character references, documenting my entire life to prove I was, in fact, a fit mother, Mark began his own campaign, a campaign of psychological warfare, with our son, Leo, as the primary target. Mark had always been the fun dad. I was the one who made sure homework was done, that vegetables were eaten, that screen time was limited. I was the parent, Mark was the playmate. After the separation, he dialed that persona up to 11. His weekends with Leo became extravagant, curated experiences designed to contrast as sharply as possible with our quiet, modest life. If you've ever had to co-parent with a manipulative ex, you know this playbook, the Disneyland parent who shows up with no rules and a pocket full of cash, making you look like the villain for enforcing a bedtime. It's the absolute worst. Leo would come home from a weekend at his dad's new, sleek downtown apartment, buzzing with a synthetic excitement. Dad got me the new PS5 he'd announce, dropping a heavy box on the floor, and the new Jordans. And we went to that steakhouse downtown, the one you said was too expensive. Each announcement was a tiny, carefully aimed dart. I knew Mark was orchestrating it. He wasn't just giving Leo gifts. He was buying evidence. He was creating a narrative. Life with Dad is abundant and exciting. Life with Mom is boring and broke. I couldn't compete. And I refused to try. I was trying to build a life for us on a single income, a life of stability and warmth, not a life of flashy, unaffordable thrills. "That's great, honey," I'd say, my smile feeling tight and fake. "Just make sure your homework is done before you set that up." And just like that, I was the bad guy again, the fun killer, the one who cared about boring things like math homework instead of new video games. But the gifts were just the surface attack. The real war was one of whispers and poison. I started to notice a change in Leo. He grew more sullen, more withdrawn after his weekends away. He'd come home and lock himself in his room. The easy conversation we once shared replaced by a monosyllabic wall. He had a secret sadness in his eyes that I couldn't reach. Then I started to hear Mark's words coming out of my son's mouth. One evening, I was exhausted after a long week at work, and I got a little sharp with Leo about his messy room. It was a normal moment of parental frustration. The next day, after a phone call with his dad, Leo looked at me with a strange, pitying expression and said, "Dad said you're probably just stressed because you're having a hard time at work. He says we have to be patient with your moods." I just stared at him. Mark had taken a normal, everyday interaction and twisted it into a symptom of my emotional volatility. He was coaching Leo on how to interpret my behavior through a lens of my supposed instability. He was teaching our son to pity me. The gaslighting was subtle, insidious, and brilliant. He never did it in text or emails. Where there would be a record, it was always in conversation. I overheard a snippet of a call once, when Leo had left his phone on speaker. "And listen, buddy," Mark was saying, his voice a performance of deep concern. "I know things are tight over at your mom's place, so try not to ask her for too much. Okay, we don't want to add to her stress." It sounded so caring on the surface, but I knew what he was doing. He was planting a seed in Leo's mind that he was a financial burden to me. He was isolating him, making him feel guilty for his very presence in my home. I tried to fight back, but how do you fight a ghost? If I confronted Leo directly and said, "Your father is manipulating you," I would be proving Mark's point. I would be the angry, paranoid one, trying to poison my son against his father. All I could do was try to counteract the poison with love and stability. "Leo, you are never a burden to me," I told him one night, after he'd quietly put back a comic book he wanted at the store. "Ever. You are the best part of my life. Your dad has more money than I do right now. That's true. But we have everything we need right here." He'd just nod, his eyes on the floor, and I could feel the wall between us getting higher. He was trapped in a loyalty bind, a tug of war with his heart, and he was miserable, and seeing him miserable was a pain worse than any of Mark's direct attacks on me. The campaign of lies reached its apex about a month before our first court date. Leo came home from a weekend with Mark looking pale and quiet. He barely spoke a word to me all evening. I tried to draw him out, but he just shrugged and retreated to his room. Later that night, I knocked on his door. "Leo, everything okay?" He opened the door a crack, not looking at me. "I'm fine." "You seem quiet. Did you have a good time with your dad?" He hesitated for a long moment, then he finally looked at me, his teenage face a mask of confusion and pain. "He told me why you guys really got divorced," he said, his voice flat. My heart stopped. "What did he tell you, honey?" "He said it's because you were always unhappy," he said, the words sounding foreign and rehearsed. "He said he tried really hard to make you happy, but nothing was ever good enough for you. And he said the reason you're always so tired and stressed out now is because you regret everything. He said you regret the divorce, and that you blame me for it. The cruelty of it, the sheer, breathtaking evil of that lie, knocked the air out of my lungs. To not only poison my son against me, but to place the burden of our divorce on his 14-year-old shoulders. It was monstrous. "Leo," I said, my voice shaking, "honey, look at me. That is not true. None of that is true. I am not unhappy. And you are the greatest joy of my entire life. Your father is lying." But I could see it in his eyes. The doubt, the seed had been planted. The poison was working. He wanted to believe me. But his father's voice was a charming, confident whisper in his ear, and mine was just the tired, stressed voice of the mother he saw every day. He just shrugged. "Okay," he said, and closed the door, leaving me alone in the hallway. I leaned against the wall, my legs feeling weak. Mark wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to scorch the earth. He was willing to burn down our son's happiness to get what he wanted. I had been trying to fight fair. I had been trying to protect Leo from the ugliness of it all. But I realized now that there was no fighting fair with a man who had no honor. The war had come to my doorstep, and I was losing. There's a unique kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting a war on two fronts. By day, I was fighting a legal battle against a man who had limitless resources and zero scruples. By night, I was fighting a psychological battle to keep my head above the suffocating waters of self-doubt and fear. I was losing on both fronts. The legal bills began to pile up on my kitchen counter, each one a crisp, white reminder of how outmatched I was. Ms. Davis was worth every penny, but every penny was one I had to scrape together. I started taking on extra freelance work, typing away at my laptop late into the night after my real job was done. My eyes burning, my shoulders aching. My world shrank to work, sleep, and the low grade, constant hum of anxiety. Mark, of course, was thriving. He would send Leo texts with pictures of him and Tiffany on a sailboat, or at a 5-star restaurant, or test driving a new convertible. Each photo was a carefully curated display of the life I couldn't provide, a silent testament to his version of the story that he was the successful, stable one, and I was the one who was struggling. But the financial strain was nothing compared to the emotional cost. The heaviest weight was the silence of my own son. Our house, once filled with the easy back and forth of our banter, was now quiet. Leo would come home from school, give me a one-word answer when I asked about his day, and then disappear into his room. The door would close, and it felt like a physical wall being erected between us. I knew he was in there, texting his dad, living in a world I was no longer privy to. And Mark's poison, so skillfully administered, began to work on me in the lonely, quiet hours of the night. His accusations would echo in my head, emotionally volatile, unstable. I'd look around my slightly messy, lived-in house, and I wouldn't see warmth. I'd see the chaos he talked about. I'd lose my patience after a long day and snap about a wet towel on the floor. And I'd immediately hear his voice in my head, telling Leo, "We have to be patient with your mother's moods." I started to second-guess every decision, every interaction. Was I being too strict, too lenient? Was I too tired, too sad? Was I, without even realizing it, becoming the bad mother he claimed I was? The gaslighting was so effective that I was starting to light the match myself. Have you ever been at a point so low you honestly didn't know how you were going to keep going? That feeling where the weight of everything is just too much. I was there. I was at rock bottom, and the floor was starting to give way. The meeting with Miss Davis a week before our first major hearing was the final blow. I sat in her sterile, professional office, feeling small and exhausted. "Anna, I need to be completely honest with you," she said, her expression serious. She pushed a folder across the desk. "This is Mark's latest filing. It's a list of character witnesses." I opened it. The list was long. It included his business partners, his golf buddies, and of course, Tiffany. But the names that made me feel sick were the ones I recognized a few of our old couple friends. People I had hosted in my home for dinner parties. People who had held Leo as a baby. Mark had been systematically working on them, selling his story, and they had bought it. "He's building a very effective narrative," Ms. Davis said, her voice gentle but firm. "He's charming, he's wealthy, and he is painting a picture of himself as a devoted father trying to rescue his son from a struggling, bitter ex-wife. It's a classic, disgusting, and often very successful strategy. But it's all lies," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "None of it is true." "I know that," she said, "but the truth, Anna, is often quieter than a good lie. He has photos from their extravagant weekends. He has receipts. He has witnesses who will testify that he seems like Father of the Year. What do we have?" The question hung in the air. We had the quiet truth. We had a mom working 2 jobs to pay her legal bills while trying to enforce a reasonable bedtime. In the optics of a courtroom, it didn't look as good. "Right now," Miss Davis said, her eyes full of a sympathy I didn't want. "He's winning the PR war. The judge could be swayed. We need to be prepared for the possibility that the court will recommend a psychological evaluation for you and for Leo." That was it. That was the moment I broke. The idea that a court-appointed stranger would be brought in to analyze me, to analyze my son, to judge my fitness as a mother based on the lies of my ex-husband, it was too much. I was no longer just fighting my ex-husband, I was fighting the system itself. A system that was poised to believe him over me. I stumbled out of her office in a daze. I got to my car, and I just sat there in the parking garage, the sterile concrete walls closing in on me, and I started to cry. Not the quiet, dignified tears of a woman trying to hold it together. I cried with my whole body, huge, ragged, ugly sobs of pure despair. He was going to win. This monster, this man who had cheated on me and then tried to destroy me, was actually going to win. He was going to take my son. The thought was a physical pain, a gaping hole in my chest. I felt like I was drowning, and I didn't have the strength to swim anymore. I put my head on the steering wheel and just gave up. I don't know how long I sat there. 10 minutes, an hour, but eventually. The storm of sobs subsided, leaving me hollowed out and empty. I fumbled in my purse for a tissue and my phone fell out. The screen lighting up. The lock screen was a photo of Leo and me, taken last summer before everything fell apart. We were at the beach, covered in sand, laughing at some stupid joke. His smile was so real, so full of pure, uncomplicated joy. I stared at that photo, at that happy boy, my happy boy, and a new feeling began to flicker in the ashes of my despair. It wasn't hope, it was something harder, something colder. It was rage, pure, undiluted, mama bear rage. How dare he? How dare he try to take this boy from me? How dare he try to erase this joy, this love, this life we had built? It didn't matter what Mark said. It didn't matter what his paid-for friends said. It didn't matter what a judge who didn't know us might think. I knew the truth. I knew I was a good mother. I knew that my love for my son was the most real and powerful thing in my life. The situation hadn't changed. The odds were still stacked against me, but in that moment, sitting in my car in a concrete parking garage, I changed. The despair was gone, burned away by the fire of a mother's love. I would not lose my son. I didn't know how I was going to win, but I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I would not, could not, ever stop fighting. I wiped my eyes, put the car in gear, and drove out of that garage, back into the light. The battle wasn't over. My renewed resolve was a shield, but it was a heavy one to carry. I went into the weeks leading up to our court date with a grim determination, but the fear of losing Leo was a constant, cold knot in my stomach. Mark's campaign continued unabated. Every weekend, Leo would go to his father's, and every Sunday evening, he would return to me a little more distant, a little more lost in the fog of his father's manipulations. Then, about 2 weeks before the hearing, Mark deployed his masterstroke. He announced he was taking Leo on a boys' weekend to New York City. It was an extravagant plan-box seats at a Yankees game, a new Broadway show, a shopping spree at the Nike store in Soho. It was every 14-year-old boy's dream, and for the first time in months, I saw a genuine spark of the old Leo. His eyes lit up. He talked excitedly about the players he might see, the things he wanted to buy. He was a kid again, and it was a beautiful, heartbreaking thing to witness. It was beautiful because he was happy. It was heartbreaking because I wasn't the one who could make him that happy. It was a clear, undeniable demonstration of the power Mark's money and influence held over our son's heart. I played my part. I feigned excitement for him. That sounds amazing. Honey, you're going to have the best time. Inside, I felt a familiar pang of inadequacy, but I pushed it down. My son was happy. That's all that mattered. The trip was scheduled for Friday on Thursday afternoon. Leo was in his room, carefully packing his suitcase, a genuine smile on his face. My phone rang. It was Mark. "Hey, Anna," he said, his voice a smooth performance of regret. "Listen, I need you to do me a favor and break some news to Leo. Something unavoidable has come up at work. A last-minute emergency conference in Miami. I have to fly out tonight. We have to postpone the New York trip." My blood ran cold. "Postpone, Mark. He's in his room packing right now. He's so excited. You can't do this to him." "It's out of my hands," he said with a sigh that was so perfectly practiced it made my teeth ache. "It's $1 billion deal. I can't miss it. He'll be disappointed, I know, but he'll understand. That's what being an adult is about. Tell him I'll make it up to him. I'll take him next month. Bigger and better. Okay, got to run. My flight is in 2 hours." And he hung up. I stood in the kitchen, my hand gripping the phone, my heart breaking for my son. I walked to his bedroom door and knocked softly. I watched the light drain from his eyes as I told him the news. I watched his face, so full of happy anticipation just moments before, crumble into a mask of disappointment. "Oh," he said, his voice small. He didn't cry, he didn't yell, he just deflated, like a balloon that had been pricked. "A work emergency." "Okay." He quietly unpacked his suitcase and spent the rest of the evening in his room with the door closed. The silence in the house was deafening. My anger at Mark was a hot, Useless thing. He had dangled the perfect dream in front of our son and then snatched it away for a work emergency. Later that night, unable to sleep, I was mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, and then I saw it. Tiffany, Mark's girlfriend, had just posted a new story. It wasn't a picture from Miami. It was a picture of two champagne glasses, clinking together in the background. A spectacular sunset over a turquoise ocean. The geotag was clear Cancun, Mexico, and the caption read, "Surprise romantic getaway with my man. He's the best 3-3. I stared at the screen, my vision going red. There was no work emergency. There was no billion-dollar deal. There was just a lie. He had canceled on his son. Broken his heart, not for work, but for a romantic vacation with his 20-something girlfriend. The casual cruelty of it, the blatant disrespect for his own child's feelings, was breathtaking. My first instinct was to storm into Leo's room and show him the picture, to prove to him, once and for all, what a selfish liar his father was. But I stopped myself. He was already so hurt. What good would it do to pour salt in that fresh wound? I saved a screenshot of the post and put my phone away, my heart heavy with a rage I couldn't express. The next evening, there was a quiet knock on my bedroom door. It was Leo. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. Can I come in?" he asked. "Of course, honey." I patted the spot next to me on the bed. He came in and sat down, not looking at me. He was silent for a long time, just staring at his hands. "He lies," he finally whispered, his voice thick with a pain that was almost a man's. "He lies all the time." My heart broke for him. "I know, sweetie." And then, the dam broke. For the first time in 6 months, my son started talking, and everything, all the pain and confusion and pressure he had been holding in, came pouring out. "He's always telling me stuff about you," he said, his voice cracking, "that you're trying to make me hate him, that you're jealous of Tiffany. He said the only reason you want me to live with you is so you can get more money from him." He finally looked at me, his eyes swimming with tears. I never believed that part. Not really. "Oh, Leo," was all I could say, pulling him into a hug he didn't resist. "And he's always making me feel bad," he continued, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "Like if I don't act super happy all the time, I'm letting him down. He's always saying stuff like, 'We have to have fun, buddy,' to make up for how sad it is at your mom's house. But it's not sad here." He pulled back and looked at me. "I hate those fancy restaurants. I hate pretending to like his boring friends. I just want to stay home and watch a movie with you and eat pizza." But if I say that, he gets this look on his face, like I've disappointed him. They say the truth will set you free. But sometimes, the truth is just heartbreaking. Seeing my son finally understand the kind of man his father was, it was the moment our whole fight changed. He wasn't just a pawn in the game anymore. He was a player who had just chosen a side. He wiped his eyes. "I'm sorry I've been such a jerk to you." "You haven't been a jerk," I said, stroking his hair. "You've been a kid, caught in an impossible situation. None of this is your fault." I hesitated for a moment, then I knew what I had to do. He deserved the whole truth. "There's something you need to see," I said gently. I picked up my phone and showed him the screenshot of Tiffany's Instagram post. The champagne glasses, the sunset, the geotag from Cancun. He stared at it, his face hardening. The last bit of illusion in his eyes died, replaced by a cold, clear understanding. His father hadn't just lied. He had chosen, and he hadn't chosen his son. In that moment, we were a team again. The wall between us was gone. He had seen the truth for himself, and I now had something I didn't have before: undeniable proof of Mark's lies and his callous disregard for his own son. The next morning, I called Miss Davis. "Good morning," I said, my voice clearer and stronger than it had been in months. "I think something has happened that you're going to want to see. I'm sending you an email. I think it's time we adjusted our strategy." The tide was turning. The day of the custody hearing felt like a dream, a surreal, slow-motion nightmare. The family courtroom was a sterile, wood-paneled room that smelled of old paper and anxiety. It was designed to be intimidating, and it was succeeding. I sat at a long table with Miss Davis. My hands clasped so tightly in my lap, my knuckles were white. across the room. Mark sat with his lawyer, looking confident, relaxed, and impossibly handsome in a tailored suit. He had Tiffany sitting behind him, her expression one of deep, performative concern. They looked like the perfect, stable couple. I just looked terrified. Leo sat quietly beside me. He was wearing a collared shirt and a tie I'd had to help him with that morning. His face was pale, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. I put my hand on his knee, and he gave me a small, reassuring squeeze. But I could feel him trembling. The hearing began, and it was everything I had feared. Mark's lawyer was slick, charming, and ruthless. He stood and painted a masterpiece of fiction. He portrayed Mark as a benevolent, successful father, desperate to provide his son with the stability his erratic mother could not. He twisted my period of unemployment into a narrative of financial irresponsibility. He twisted my grief over the divorce into emotional instability. He presented evidence credit card statements showing the lavish weekends, the expensive gifts, photos of Mark, and a smiling, though I now knew, forced smiling Leo at baseball games, at fancy restaurants, on a ski trip. It was a mountain of superficial, curated evidence that made him look like Father of the Year. Then he called his character witness, one of our old friends, a woman who had been to my house a dozen times. She testified that, yes, Anna seemed very stressed in the last year. That was it. That was all she said. But in the cold, clinical context of the courtroom, it sounded damning. I had to sit there, silent and still, as this man I didn't even recognize dismantled my character, lie by vicious lie. I could feel the judge's eyes on me, her expression unreadable. I felt like I was losing, like the truth was a small, quiet bird, and his lies were a roaring hurricane, and the bird was about to be swept away. The judge called for a 15-minute recess before I was scheduled to take the stand. The moment we were dismissed, I felt a wave of nausea. I was going to lose him. As we stood in the hallway, Mark walked past us on his way to the men's room. He didn't speak, but he gave me a look. It was a look of pure, triumphant pity. It was the look of a man who knew he was winning. And that was the moment something changed. Leo saw that look. He saw the smug victory on his father's face, and he saw the quiet despair on mine. And I saw a decision harden in my son's eyes. He turned to Ms. Davis. "I want to talk to the judge," he said. His voice wasn't a child's voice. It was clear, steady, and full of a resolve that sent a shiver down my spine. Miss Davis looked surprised. "Leo? Are you sure that's a lot of pressure? His lawyer will cross-examine you. He will try to twist your words." "I don't care," Leo said, his jaw set. "My dad is lying about everything. I want to tell the truth." He looked at me. "Mom, can I?" I looked into my son's eyes. He wasn't a scared little boy anymore. He was a young man, ready to fight for his own truth. My fear for him was overwhelmed by my pride in him. "Yes," I said to Miss Davis, my voice thick with emotion. "Let him speak." When court resumed, Miss Davis stood, "Your Honor, before my client takes the stand. The defense would like to call a witness, Leo Morgan." A jolt went through the courtroom. Mark shot up from his chair. "Objection." "Your Honor," his lawyer shouted. "The child is being manipulated. This is a desperate attempt by the respondent to coach the witness." The judge looked down at them, her expression severe. Then she looked at Leo, who was standing beside me, his posture straight, his expression unwavering. "I will allow it," the judge said. "The court will hear from the child." Objection overruled. Mark sank back into his chair, his face ashen. The confident smirk was gone, replaced by a look of pure, animal panic. I watched, my heart in my throat, as my 14-year-old son walked to the witness stand. I watched as he placed his hand on the Bible and swore to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. He looked so small in that big, imposing chair. Miss Davis approached him gently. "Leo, thank you for being here. I just have a few questions for you. Can you tell the court what it's like when you spend weekends at your dad's apartment?" Leo looked at the judge. "It's loud," he said. "We're always going somewhere, to fancy restaurants or games. There are always a lot of his friends there. He buys me a lot of stuff. A new phone, new shoes, video games. And do you enjoy those weekends? Miss Davis asked. Leo hesitated. Sometimes. But I mostly just feel tired. He's always telling me we have to have epic fun. He says it's his job to make me happy because things are so sad at home. A murmur went through the courtroom. Mark was staring at Leo, his eyes burning with rage. Is it sad at your mom's house? Ms. Davis asked softly. No, Leo said, shaking his head. It's quiet. We do my homework. We watch movies. We eat pizza on the couch. She gets mad sometimes if my room is a mess. But it feels like home. My dad's apartment feels like I'm visiting a TV show. Miss Davis then walked him through the events of the canceled New York trip. Leo told the story in simple, factual terms. He said there was a work emergency in Miami he had to go to. Your Honor, Miss Davis said, at this time, the defense would like to submit into Evidence Exhibit D. She produced a large printout of Tiffany's Instagram post. The champagne glasses, the beach in Cancun. Mark's lawyer leaped to his feet again, shouting objections, but the judge just waved him down, her eyes fixed on the photograph. Then, Miss Davis asked her final question. Leo, you've been in this courtroom all morning. You heard your father's lawyer say that your mother, Anna, is a bad mother. What do you have to say about that? This was it, the moment that would decide everything. Leo didn't look at his father. He didn't look at me. He looked directly at the judge. His expression clear and honest, and so much older than his 14 years. My dad tells me my mom is a bad mother, he said, his voice ringing with a truth that was undeniable. He tells me that all the time. But when I'm sick, he sends his assistant to bring me medicine. My mom stays home from work and makes me soup and reads to me until I fall asleep. He took a breath. When I was struggling with my math homework, my dad told me to just get a tutor. My mom sat with me at the kitchen table for 2 hours every night until I finally understood it. He looked down at his hands, then back at the judge. My dad buys me things to try to make me happy, but my mom, she's just with me when I'm sad. She doesn't try to fix it. She just sits with me. He finally looked over at me, his eyes full of a love so pure and so powerful it took my breath away. My dad says he wants to be my best friend, but my mom is my mom. She's not my best friend. She's my home. And she's a really, really good one. The courtroom was dead silent. I was openly weeping. Tears of pride and love streaming down my face. Miss Davis had tears in her eyes. Even the stony-faced court reporter seemed to be wiping at her eye. Mark was just staring at his son, his face a mask of disbelief. He had spent 6 months and a fortune building a fortress of lies, and our son, our quiet, gentle son, had just walked up and demolished it with nothing but the simple, honest truth. The battle was over, and my son had been the one to win the war. The silence that fell over the courtroom after Leo spoke was absolute. It was a heavy, profound quiet, broken only by the sound of my own choked, quiet sobs of pride. Leo remained on the witness stand, his small shoulders straight, his gaze fixed on the judge. He had spoken his truth, and now he simply waited. Mark's lawyer, the slick, confident man who had so skillfully twisted my life into a weapon against me, looked utterly defeated. He just stood there, his mouth slightly open, and then slowly sat down. No further questions for this witness. Your Honor, he mumbled, his voice barely audible. All eyes turned to my ex-husband. Mark's face was a mask of disbelief and incandescent rage. He looked at Leo not with the love of a father, but with the fury of a king whose own pawn had just checkmated him. The carefully constructed narrative he had spent a fortune and 6 months building had been demolished in 5 minutes by the simple, honest testimony of a 14-year-old boy. The judge, a woman with graying hair and eyes that had seen every kind of family tragedy, looked down at Leo with an expression of profound respect and kindness. Thank you. Leo, she said softly, you have been very brave and very clear. You may step down. As Leo walked back to our table, he looked at me, and I gave him a watery, trembling smile that I hoped conveyed even a fraction of the immense love and pride I felt in that moment. He sat down beside me and found my hand under the table, squeezing it tightly. We were a team again. We were unbreakable. The judge cleared her throat, her gaze shifting from Leo to Mark. The kindness in her eyes vanished, replaced by a cold, hard anger that made the air in the room crackle. "I have heard enough," she announced. "I am ready to make a ruling." She looked directly at my ex-husband, and I would not have traded places with him in that moment for all the money in the world. "Mr. Morgan," she began, her voice low and laced with steel. "In my 15 years on this bench, I have seen many contentious custody battles, but rarely have I seen such a calculated, malicious, and ultimately self-serving campaign of parental alienation as the one you have waged against Miss Morgan." Mark started to object, but she cut him off with a sharp glare. "You have used your financial advantage and your position of trust as a father not to support your son, but to manipulate him. You have systematically attempted to poison him against his mother, a woman who, by all credible accounts, has been a loving, stable, and dedicated parent under immense duress. Your actions have shown a shocking disregard for your son's emotional well-being. Your petition was not about his best interests. It was about your ego and your desire to punish your ex-wife. This court finds your behavior appalling." She let the condemnation hang in the air for a moment before delivering the final verdict. "Therefore, this court grants sole legal and primary physical custody of the minor child, Leo Morgan, to his mother, Anna Morgan." A sob of pure, unadulterated relief escaped my lips. I grabbed Leo and hugged him, burying my face in his shoulder. It was over. We had won. The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, she continued, her eyes still locked on my ex-husband's ashen face, "Mr. Morgan's visitation with his son will be, for the foreseeable future, professionally supervised. He will be required to attend and complete a co-parenting and anger management course, alone, and he will be ordered to pay 100% of Miss Morgan's legal fees for this proceeding." It was a total, complete, and utter victory, not just for me, but for the truth. We walked out of that courthouse into the bright afternoon sun, and for the first time in almost a year, I felt like I could breathe again. The weight that had been crushing my chest was just gone. Leo walked beside me, his head held high. We saw Mark and Tiffany scurrying out a side entrance, their faces grim, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. They were no longer the power couple. They were just the losers in a battle of their own creation. 6 months later, our house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. It was the easy, comfortable silence of peace, not the tense, heavy silence of pain. Leo and I had found our rhythm again. We ate pizza on the couch. We argued about whose turn it was to do the dishes. We talked about everything. He was a happy, healthy, thriving 16-year-old. The sullen, withdrawn boy was gone, replaced by the smart, kind, wonderful son I had always known was there. Mark's visitations were, as ordered, supervised. They were awkward, stilted affairs at a sterile facility. He had lost his greatest weapon, his charm and his money, and without them, he didn't seem to know how to talk to his own son. Their relationship was in tatters, a consequence of his own making. I felt no joy in it. I just felt a quiet sense of justice. One evening, I was watching Leo at the kitchen table, his head bent over a chemistry textbook, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up and caught me watching him, a small smile on his face. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," I said, my heart so full of love I thought it might burst. "Just everything. My ex-husband tried to convince me, my son, and the world that I was a bad mother. He used every weapon he had, his money, his charm, his lies. But he forgot about the most powerful force in the entire universe, the truth, spoken in the clear, steady voice of a child who knows, without a single doubt, that he is loved. For anyone out there going through a battle like this, for anyone who has been made to feel small or to question their own worth, please hear me. Do not lose faith. Love your children fiercely. Live your truth honestly, and trust that, in the end, that truth will be your greatest and most powerful defense." Thank you for listening to my story. If you're a parent who has fought for your kids, I see you and I honor you. Please like, subscribe, and share this story with anyone who needs a reminder that the light will always find a way to break through the darkness. I'll see you next time.